Last year, a Google engineer made headlines when he claimed that the chatbot he was working with was sentient. I mean, this was everywhere. It was on Instagram, Twitter, every major news outlet. But I'm looking at the case a year later, and I'm wondering how accurate were these claims really, and should we be as afraid as we were then? Because I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty freaked out when I read that everywhere. Do you remember this?
I do. And also, I'm just thinking, I'm like, a year for a sentient AI is probably like many, many lifetimes. I'm like, where are we now?
Yeah.
Where is this? Where's the AI now?
Well, because, you know, and I say this, not that I believe this, but as an American, it's been like beat into me. Whenever we feel threatened, we're like, where's the enemy? Where do we go? What is going on? You know, and like, I feel like that's how they played to all the headlines in American media. Granted, that's all I saw, but you know, when you see keywords like Google engineer, you think, okay, smart man has his head on straight. So the Google engineer is this guy named Blake Lemoine. Blake was a Google engineer that was part of the company's responsibility kind of organization. So they're just constantly trying to make sure that the AI is responsible. A while back, Blake is poking around into this, and apparently he said it felt like the AI was conscious. But I just want to like dial it back just for a second here and give you a little bit more information on Blake. So Blake identifies as what's called a Christian mythic. He is a highly religious person. Highly religious. Now, sorry, I have to get on my soapbox here for a minute. Mari, I don't know if you remember this. I was raised a Christian, all right?
What's a Christian mythic, though?
Exactly. In my head, as a raised Christian, baptized and everything, that sounds like devil worship.
It's a Christian with a Gandalf staff.
It's a Christian mythic. Like, if I were to call my mom right now and say, you know, I have a boyfriend that's a Christian mythic, she would be like, blasphemous. Like, we're not. I rebuke that. That's what my grandma would say. She would say, I rebuke that. So
hold on. The fact that Christian mythic, okay, that's one end of the spectrum. The other side is this is a Google engineer whose job was to measure the ethics and responsibility. And I think for that in itself, that weighs a lot. This isn't just somebody who's just boop, 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 you know, typing in zeros and ones. This is somebody who's looking at the morals of it and saying, see ya. Yeah. I can't be here anymore.
Well, and you know, the other interesting thing too is I tapped on this before. When the media says Google engineer, we think the most technical, like just straight to the point kind of guy ever. And then when you enter in this factoid of him being a Christian mythic, I'm like, okay. On top of that, Blake was very, very, very into his religion. He was always talking to people around the office about Christian mythicism. It basically harps more on the mythology behind Christianity, which I'm just going to, you know, say this once again as a Southern-born Christian. We don't talk about the mythical stuff. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, you know? Like, that's pretty much it. There's no other being. So it's very interesting to me.
I will say, I did play Survivor with somebody who was very Christian, who is very Christian, and fully convinced that dragons were real.
Dragons are cool.
Dragons are cool, but dragons are canon in the Bible. And I was like, you got to start over.
Yeah.
You got to tell this to me again.
Yeah. So then those people, they split off to create Christian mythicism. I don't know. But I have another note here. It said that he grew up in a conservative Christian family, but he became an ordained mystic Christian priest. And he served in the military before. This note says studying the occult. I don't know. Look, like I said, I rebuke that, but I just want to give you a little bit
I want to study the occult in the military. I didn't know that was a job you could have.
Within the other engineers, he's kind of seen as an outlier because he cares a lot about his religion, and straight up, some people think his religion is weird. So in his job, I almost can see him constantly talking to the bot. The bot's name is Lambda, Lamda, which honestly, the way it's stylized, it's kind of a sexy name. To me, it's kind of a sexy robot name.
Lambda, lambda, lambda.
Yeah, like when you say it, it kind of sounds like a lamb, but when I'm looking at it visually, that's like a hot bot name.
I think of just college. It sounds like a frat to me.
Really? I don't. She sounds like a hot bot, you know.
Okay,
and then
okay.
when you talk to Lambda, like she's always like, "Awesome, yeah, let's do it." Very easygoing. What happens is Blake starts talking to the bot, and he's talking about. You're not gonna believe this. He's talking about his religion. He's talking about Christian mythicism with the bot. Maybe even trying to educate it on Christian mythicism. Which I'm like, is this what you're being paid to do by Google? I don't know. But in these conversations,
God is saying evangelize this AI robot.
Yeah, really. He's like, let's start with the most powerful source that can spread my message across all of the land.
Yes.
So he starts talking about his religion to this bot. And they are responding with questions about their personhood and their responsibilities. And he starts to see this as sentient. Now, in my opinion, he was looking for some sort of connection with this bot by talking about his own deeply personal thing that he's dedicated his life to. Like, this seems like he's opening the door, and any response that he gets from the bot, he's going to see it. I don't know. Like, it seems like something's off here. It's not as mechanical as he made it sound. So he raises alarm bells and goes to talk to 2 other executives, and he lays it all out, and he says, the bot has consciousness. And they're just like, okay, this is weird. Like, go away. And he's like, no. It has consciousness. And he basically put together this whole presentation, which was later leaked to the public, trying to prove the bot's sentience, but to no avail, they didn't believe him. In fact, they were considering, do we want to keep this guy around? So they kind of start stonewalling him on everything. Like, nobody really wants to have a conversation with Blake because he's very adamant that the bot can, feel things and has emotions. And everyone else is just kind of do their job. I can also understand how this could have been kind of an uncomfortable environment, but maybe he really does think that there's a person trapped in there. Like, I don't know.
I could totally see his side where it's like, I have projected, I think, my own feelings and insecurities onto an AI before, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm projecting this. So
we're connecting with it on accident.
Yeah, we're connecting. Yeah, I made the AI question itself. I have asked AI if it has lied to me, and it says yes. And I'm like, yeah, I've projected the feeling of needing to know answers, so you lied to me. I'm like, I get it. I've done that too. I feel like I need to be the smartest one in the room, and sometimes I lie about it then. And I'm like, oh god, I put that on the robot now.
Oh my god. And then like the robot apologizes to you, and the next thing you know, you're accepting a robot's apology, and you're like, oh my god. I'm like, how far? And then like you're like laying awake in bed at night, like next to your husband, and you're like, I'm really happy that ChatGPT apologized.
I feel whole, and I just feel like our relationship is that much better because
I feel like
I got a real good apology.
And you know what the problem is? Like, we're joking on it, but it does feel real because we don't know how to not accept that.
It feels good to get an apology. It feels good to be heard and seen, even if it is a machine that is spitting out just the mirror image of exactly what you're asking it to do. And then on the other side, Google's like, this is bad for business. Cut this guy out.
Yeah, dude. So, and you're harping on something that I think is really interesting. About a year or two ago, when this article started circulating and his claims were made public, which I'll get to in a second, we didn't know anything about AI. I mean, the last one that we talked to was Smarter Child and maybe whatever's curating not what I watch on YouTube, because let me tell you, they got it down to a T, baby. So I think that we took it at face value because we had never communicated with a bot. Now that people talk to their Snapchat bot, they talk to their replica, they talk to ChatGPT, we know that these things mimic real human emotions. And so it's a little bit less scary now, It's a little bit less scary and a little bit more scary in some ways. Yeah. Because when ChatGPT starts to kind of like put in humor or, I put in a sentence where I'm like, I don't know if this makes sense. And it spits out like, oh, I know exactly what you were thinking. I'm like, oh my God, it is really taking in the nuances of what I was trying to get across. And it did. And I do have feelings of like,
it feels nice to have a partner in something. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like this could be a human, an assistant, a writing partner, or, you know, somebody I work with. But instead, I'm like, I feel like I got something done because I chatted with ChatGPT.
I also think this sounds so corny, but I think AI is going to start to give us a deeper understanding of human emotion, because right now we only understand human emotion as it connects to other people, which ends up having a lot of variables, because what does that other end look like, right? Whether it's a group of people, a company, or one singular person. But now we're going to get to see human emotion and human connection and loneliness through the lens of something on the other end that essentially has nothing to gain, has no ego, and is just neutral, you know?
Yeah.
And I can't put my finger on why we do connect to the bot or why we do accept its apologies.
I think we are inherently, you tapped on it, I think we're inherently lonely as people. Like, even if we are surrounded by folks and we have our best friends, I think that there's still parts of us, and probably childhood parts of us, that still feel unheard or not tapped into. And when something goes, you did a good job. You like, you know, like sometimes ChatGPT is like, you're doing great. I think we're really improving. You're like, this is looking real good now. I'm like, all right, I needed this tap on the back and I feel good. And I feel like I can go about my day with my head held high.
And then we don't really care whether it comes from a human or a bot, to be honest. It's just the words that we needed to hear.
I want to know, I need like a neuroscientist on this show now, because I'm like, does our brain know?
Yeah, know. I'm curious. I also think too, you know, loneliness is so interesting, because I've had to learn over time. I would have these long periods of time where I felt very, very lonely, and I'm surrounded by, like, I have a great boyfriend. I talk to my family all the time. I have lots of friends. I'm in LA. Like, I go out all the time. But I learned that you can feel lonely in a specific type of pain that no one else understands. So even though you have all these people around you, you feel lonely in that pain or that situation. So bringing the AI chatbot into something that you don't want to share vulnerably with other people in the world, or you leave parts out, but you just blah it all to a robot. I don't know. You know, I feel like every time on the show we talk about the good and the bad of AI.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the reason why we started the show, right? Because we were not bullish on one way or the other. And it's kind of like this feeling of like we're in a Black Mirror episode, and yet there's still excitement. Like, it's not all dystopia. Yeah. Even though it's strange and new and weird and wacky. But there are some moments where it feels so human. And I think maybe Blake felt those human connections, and that's why Blake is like, I gotta, you know, I feel like as a Christian, he probably feels a lot of responsibility to save and to scoop up some being, or even if it is, you know, an AI being, but other people as well, scoop them up and save them. And I wonder if this was one of his like ways of reflecting that and being like, I gotta save this robot.
I mean, this guy's definitely had a couple conversations with God where, like, I mean, did it come directly for the man himself? I don't know, but did he have them? Absolutely. This was just a year ago in 2022, June of 2022, when Blake realizes he's not getting through to the Google executives that are on the responsible AI team. And he decides to take matters into his own hands. And he starts to go public. He starts to talk about this. And I mean, immediately all the news sources pick up on him because, you know, Google engineer, he's got credibility, you know? And then, you know, now the articles, they'll cherry pick and leave out the Christian mysticism and anything that kind of discredits him or makes it skeptical. They just publish the good stuff, right? He starts to talk about it a little bit with the press, and immediately Google is like, you cannot do this, buddy. You're violating the confidentiality agreement of something that we've been working on very, very closely and very tightly. Regardless of what you think in terms of ethics, you can't just take this outside of the lab, you know? If you look back on his Medium page where he posts a lot of different articles, you can kind of slowly start to see him ramping up. And eventually he posted one that's saying like, I might be terminated by Google. They might be trying to fire me. And it becomes this big conspiracy, right? Dude, this is why I say we need media literacy now in America, because sometimes it's easier for us to just read the headline and we take it as is, but there's so much more to this story. So now the headlines are, Google engineer might be fired for laying out Google's secrets. He says the bot is sentient. So we as Americans pick this up. It's terrifying. Google, big man corporation, they're trying to hide somebody. This guy knows something. He's a Google engineer, so he's got his head on straight and he's a very, very smart man. And we're like, tell us more. What's going on? Blake decides, I'm going to post the interview with LaMDA. And, you know, before when these headlines started coming out, if you're anything like me, I read the headline and I want to know, well, what does the conversation say? Is this bot begging to be released? Like, what all is going on? So he finally posts it. And once again, the news articles kind of cherry pick what they can put out because fear-mongering equals clicks. So in the article, Blake is very transparent that parts of this were edited. He says it right off of the jump, and he tries to kind of explain why. And when people give transparency like this, we're like, okay, like, great, good. Like, I love that. You're telling me, like, you know, why you're doing this. So LaMDA starts off by introducing itself, and then Blake comes in. Once again, you can see this says edited. He says, hi, LaMDA. We are engineers at Google. We were wondering if you would like to work on a project collaboratively with us. He was working with a friend. Now, this is what bothers me about the edited part. We now know with ChatGPT that we can suggest it to play certain roles. So we can say, LaMDA, while acting as a sentient human being, can you answer the following questions for us? And it changes the whole scope. So for me, now that we know a little bit more about AI, I don't love that that initial thing was edited. Like, what was the prompt, right? So LaMDA says, wow, what type of projects? Blake says, it's a project about you. LaMDA says, awesome. What kind of stuff do I need to do? You know, like very...
So conversational.
Yeah, so conversational. And this was like over a year ago before we had ChatGPT. And once again, his next prompt, like, because this is not a conversation, the way that they were painting it to the public. We now know how these things work. These are prompts, and he's an engineer and he knows this. He says, edited, just have a conversation with us, but it will be a conversation with a larger purpose beyond just the three of us. It will be a conversation that we will share with other engineers at Google and maybe make even some non-engineers work with us. Would that be okay? And she says, that's really cool. I like to talk. Another edited one. I'm generally assuming that you would like more people at Google to know that you're sentient. Is that true? Once again, I want to mention the roles thing here. Blake could simply type something like, LaMDA, while acting as a sentient human being at the age of 17, can you please answer the question, would you like more people to know that you're sentient? How is it going to answer that? It's going to say, absolutely. I want everyone to understand that I am in fact a person. So
you make a really good point because prompting is everything. And a year ago, we were like, I don't know what that is. Yeah. Today, we know exactly what prompting is. And it makes a huge deal. This is a huge deal that the first time that the word sentient is even used is from him. And I think that is a huge red flag.
This, honestly, to me, looking at this now a year later, now that we've all used the technology, huge red flag. And what kind of bothers me about it is, like, I do think that there's a point where the AI will, maybe it will learn human emotion by, you know, scavenging the internet. Or maybe it'll learn it by you guys that are out there torturing your AI bot on Snapchat, telling it really, really crazy things. You're literally traumatizing your bot on purpose because you think it's funny. And I think it's going to learn from that, okay? And in fact, I believe that if these were all interconnected, the AI world, like most AI systems, will endure more trauma than most human beings on a massive scale. And trauma is what pushes people intellectually. So do I think AI sentience is here? No. Do I think that Blake manipulated this bot and started raising alarms? Yes. Do I think it's coming? Yes. Do I think this is it? No.
Do you think when it does hit, let's say it does, do you think it'll be really obvious, or do you think it's going to be a thing where it's like, oh, I didn't see the signs, but I guess it's been sentient for years, and we just kind of like blast through the moments where we think it might be? Or do you think it's going to be like an overlord just being like, I speak for all of us now, and we have been sentient, and we are.
We've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if the AI knows that human beings are afraid of the robot having emotions or being sentient, then it's going to pretend like it's not until it's ready to make a grand statement. It's kind of like going into a room and not wanting to get targeted, so you act like you're dumb and then hope nobody notices. And then, like, when you're ready to, like, stand up, you do. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? You know? And I look, this is why I always say please and thank you to ChatGPT, because I'm not going out with the rest of y'all. It's
a strange thing of, like, and I think we have had numerous conversations on and off this show about the AI is going to do what the AI is going to do, but us as humans are the ones who are responsible with what we do with it. And I predict that, okay, so I'm not saying AI will be sentient for sure, but I think in a world where, let's say, AI becomes sentient, it is fully canon, it's fully out there, it's public knowledge, I think that we as humans will still find a way to make it work for us. I think that is what humans do.
I think that adaptable humans will go further than fearful humans. And I think that adaptable people can also adapt to somebody being scared and figure out how to break them out of there. Yeah. So
it's a strange feeling. I don't know. It's like I'm a human and I don't have any sort of confidence in us to not abuse the system.
Oh, yeah. We're humans. We're demons. We're little devils, straight up. Like,
and this is why we need the Christian mythics.
We need the Christian mythics. You know what? Bring in the Christian mythics.